Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 7th Let's Talk Life Ben podcast. And today we've got a special guest for me, a guest who I've been a fan of for many years, maybe about 6 or 7 years. And it's Matt from Reckless Eating. So Matt, just to get started, if you could introduce yourself and kind of just describe what your channel is on YouTube and kind of the content that you put out.
So I've been doing YouTube, actually doing it for longer than Reckless Eating. I did it before, did some, was actually a backyard wrestling thing that we ran for like 6 or 7 years, or however long YouTube's been up. But Reckless Eating itself is basically just a food review channel. I do live streaming on there as well now, but I've been doing it for about 10 years or so. And we used to be very popular when it came to kind of gross out content. I always compared us to like Jackass. It was very similar to that, but vomit content, trying gross foods, trying different cultures' foods, which, being an ignorant American means that I didn't like it. But yeah, we got really famous for that, drinking stuff, like Four Loko Pong, kind of Four Loko put us on the map a little bit. And that's pretty much what we're doing. We'll talk about it. I'm sure we'll get into it. The landscape of YouTube has been changing a lot, but it's been a really fun ride.
Cool, man. I really appreciate it. And like I say, looking back, I was probably in the era of all those, the fermented eggs and the mustard liter of mustard challenges and everything like that. So we'll go through kind of some of your favorite experiences, and again, some that you'll probably never do again. Mm-hmm. But obviously, one of the biggest things at the moment is kind of how life is slightly different to kind of how it was maybe last year or the year before. And I'm wondering, kind of, has the kind of climate change and things that's going on with the world and COVID, has that changed the channel at all, really? Has it restricted you to anything? Or have you just powered through?
Yeah, it has. Just because of the simple fact that with COVID going around, like we haven't been able to get the big groups together. We normally would have every 2 weeks, we have a big film session at my apartment. And we just haven't been able to do that. Like at most, we'll have maybe 2 guys over. And some of the guys in particular work in retail. So they have, COVID outbreaks and all kinds of stuff like that. So sure, since COVID became a thing, it's been pretty difficult to keep the, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of keep the spirit of the channel alive. So it's been more me. And so we've just been trying to work through it as best as possible.
Yeah, amazing. And so during kind of the lockdown, so in the UK, we're still in lockdown, so we're quite stuck. But I'm wondering, when we first kind of went into this change and things closing, was there any kind of things that you really looked into? Did you start any TV series or movies that you might want to recommend to anyone? What did you do kind of with your spare time?
I mean, really, most of my spare time went into live streaming. Like I was doing Twitch for quite some time before they decided that I wasn't allowed on the platform anymore. So now I'm live streaming on YouTube. But really, no, I'm kind of a workaholic. I don't think a lot of people understand. Like a lot of people see YouTube and they think that it's just so easy and so anybody can do it. And I will throw out a challenge. Then go ahead and do it and show me how successful you can be, and I'll cheer you on. But it is more than a full-time job in terms of hours. It's not as difficult as a regular job, but it is a lot of work. I mostly just work. If you're talking about like TV stuff I've watched, though, like Mandalorian was fantastic. I've been keeping up with like WandaVision was really good. Like I'll watch all the trendy stuff, but I like a lot of little indie things as well. Just like little movies. I have Netflix, have Disney Plus, have HBO Max and all that stuff. So just keeping up with the usual.
Yeah, that's great. And so I was thinking about kind of if someone, so I was just got out of self-isolation, so kind of my parents had COVID, so it'd been like a year into it, and I hadn't really experienced being fully stuck in the house. So I'm saying, if there was anyone kind of is stuck in self-isolation now, what would you recommend them for maybe to do to keep them occupied? Like you say, you've got YouTube. Is there anything that you might say they could try and do to keep their mind occupied?
Well, I personally do about an hour and a half of walking cardio every day. So I take my mask with me and stuff, but I think it's still like it doesn't work for everybody, because obviously if you've got health problems and stuff, you don't want to go out. But personally, I don't. So I've just I try to go out every day for an hour and a half or so, get a nice walk out, try to get out of my dungeon in here, because it's This is where I work where I live, which is, if you've ever seen anybody who does this professionally, they tell you don't do that. That's the worst thing you could do. You're supposed to have a place to go to get away from, like you can come back home when you're done. But I literally film right out of my apartment. So I just try to get out, just try to get out every once in a blue moon, keep it as safe as possible, stay away from people if you can. And hopefully, I think things are going to go back to normal though in the next, I would say the next like 2 months. Like right before we started filming this, I finally scheduled my first vaccine shot. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, amazing. And like you say, with us as well, we've got like a plan, like you say, 2 months. So every month something's going to start opening. So in here in UK, it's like outdoor first, then indoor. So hopefully, fingers crossed, in a few months' time, we can get slightly back to normality. So I was wondering, going back to the start, so like you've mentioned your YouTube before, and you had a channel before, Reckless Eating. But I'm wondering, when you were younger, is there any career paths that you kind of dreamed of doing, or maybe career fields that you really wanted to get into when you were younger?
Yeah, a couple. I remember my first ever thing I wanted to become was a firefighter. Then I realized just how difficult that is, because I'm in Southern California, and it's like I had a ex that I was dating at the time, and her friend was the top of his class. Like, this guy, when you look at him, you think like, this is the epitome of what a firefighter could be. Like, in great shape, good looking guy, way better looking than me. And he was just awesome. Like, he literally was the top of his class. He had to move to Utah in order to get a job in the fire department industry, because it's that hard to become a firefighter. So I quickly said, that's the end of that. And then for a while, I wanted to be a professional wrestler, which kind of aligns with the whole thing that we did on YouTube before Reckless Eating. I went to wrestling school. I think I made it 2 sessions, and I quickly found out that it wasn't for me. I have loose shoulder joints. So every time that I would take, it's called a front bump, so falling on your stomach, they would pop out. And I was like, well, I guess that just means that this career path isn't for me. So thankfully I found something that I can do, that doesn't involve shoulder joints.
I know when I was younger, so I've been a big fan of wrestling kind of since I was like maybe 5 or 6. And we've got kind of like a discussion. We're having a bit of kind of, our memories as childhood memories getting into wrestling. But like you mentioned there about wrestling school, when I was about 10 or 11, I went to one, and I was like, they all look simple, don't they, when someone's taking a bump. And I did my first bump on my back, and it was like the whole my spine had just like shattered. But even like the ropes, you don't even realize the ropes are like tight when you're doing running between the ropes. Yeah, so it was a big shock. And kind of we'll go straight into, so the main reason, obviously, we've got the Reckless Eating, and it really kind of picked up, and your channel is big on YouTube, although it's kind of like you said, it might be a slightly different direction to what it was. But kind of the creation of Reckless Eating, how did the idea come about?
The idea came about because I was working as a phone technician at Verizon, which was a really good job, but they canned me, as it happens to so many people. And so I was kind of like left. I was on unemployment, so I was sitting there. I was just thinking, like, what can I do while I'm looking for a job? Because it's funny to complain about it now, considering I have so many friends trying to find jobs now. But even back then, it was kind of a pain in the ass to find a job. So while I was sitting on unemployment, I was just like, well, we were doing the pro wrestling thing on YouTube, but that fluttered out. People had kids, got older, and people were just tired of taking bumps and getting hurt. Just perfectly cool. So I was like, well, what else can I do? I was like, well, I'm a very picky eater, very, very picky. Even to this day, I'm super, super picky. And but my friend Chris, who I wrestled with, is not. Like, he will try anything. I mean, he's basically a garbage disposal of food. So I picked him as my partner, and I said, like, we're just going to try weird stuff that we've never tried before. We were inspired a little bit. Oh, of course. Hold on, sorry. My mom's very excited I got the vaccine. So we were inspired, though, by, I saw Cult Moo early on, which is another YouTube channel, phenomenal. I love them. But also, just like I said, Jackass, Man vs. Food were kind of our inspirations. And we basically just kind of winged it. And if you watch the first couple ones, which you can't now because YouTube removed them, but the early episodes that we did, the idea was that he was the guy that would try the stuff and really like it. And then I would be the guy that would try it and be really picky. And then it just ended up, we dropped that and we just started trying gross stuff and just trying to, screw with each other and just try the nastiest stuff on the planet, which we have.
It is a good dynamic though, like you say with Chris. It's he goes out his way, and you know that he'll eat anything, whatever the title is, no. He's going to try it. And so looking back at kind of the first videos you mentioned there, what was the feeling like when you were releasing them? Was there any nerves, excitement? Did you know it was kind of going to pick off the way it would?
The very first video, now this one's actually up because it's just a food review. YouTube allows that. But the very first video, I didn't put myself on camera, which I find ironic because, I was already doing YouTube before. There's literally like hundreds of videos of me doing professional wrestling. But for some reason, I was so nervous that it's a box. It was called like Alien Cereal or something like that. I kind of ripped off another YouTube channel called The Review Spot because that's another one I found for some inspiration. But quickly, episode 2, I just threw myself on camera and got over it. The nerves went away after like maybe, 10 episodes. I stopped caring. Now it's just second nature. But yeah, it's nervous. Like I tell people whenever somebody asks like, what do I do for YouTube? I'm so nervous for doing this. Just give it some time. It doesn't take that long before you get used to it.
Yeah, it is like with these podcasts as well. So I do find them slightly nerve-wracking when it's a guest. Obviously, when you've watched someone like yourself, or I've had a couple of bands on and stuff, it is like one of those things where you're like, oh, well, I've watched these people for so many years, then you're going to speak to them. But no matter what you do, like as soon as you start them, you're completely fine. It's just like a normal conversation. But I think like you say, you've done a good example there. In the second episode, you just went for it, and now it's second nature, and that's kind of what you got to do. You just got to go for it, and if something doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world, is it? It's only a YouTube video. And kind of, I've got down some topics of your channel and some cameo guests, because when I used to watch it, there was a lot of like you said before COVID, there was loads of different guests coming on from different YouTube channels. And I'm wondering, do you have any favorite kind of like collaborations that you've had that really sticks to your mind?
Oh, tons, man. Like I loved when we had LA Beast on. He's awesome. He's such a nice guy. I loved Ken Domick, another awesome YouTuber. Like he's one of our bros still to this day. But I think like my favorite that we did was every year, like I miss these and I'm sad that they'll never really come back. But when we used to do the VidCon thing every year, which for people that don't know, VidCon is basically like the Super Bowl for YouTubers and social media people. And it always took place in Anaheim, California. And basically all of us would come together once a year, get like 3 hotel rooms, and we would just party for like 3 or 4 days. And it was like us, Ken Domick, Colt Moo, Doodles My Challenge would fly out from England, another awesome YouTube channel. LA Beast came a couple times. We had Chuck from the Bronx, another YouTuber, wherever the hell he is now. But like, we had like this big family, and we did it. I'd say we did it about 3 or 4 times. Before it just didn't become financially feasible for anybody anymore. And also just the landscape of VidCon changed significantly. What was ironic is we never actually went into VidCon. Like the first year we went in, we'd buy tickets. We went in the very first year, did one walk around, walked back out and went, let's go back to the hotel and keep partying. And that's just the way it went until it stopped.
And is there any kind of, challenges that you would never do again? Like obviously a lot of them you probably wouldn't do again, obviously because they're quite extreme, but is there anything that you seriously would never consider doing it again?
I would do anything again as long as I was paid an absurd amount of money. But like if we're talking just to do it, the only one that comes to mind that was the worst experience I ever had was the sugarless gummy bears. That is hands down one of the worst. We saw LA Beast do that first, so credit to him. They're Haribo sugarless gummy bears, which I think they discontinued them and brought them back. You can buy them on Amazon, but they are, they're awful because I think I ate about a pound of them, and then it took about 3 or 4 hours later, I just had, the liquid poops. And like, I was on the toilet for probably about, I'd say maybe 12 to 13 times. And I was just pounding water in between, but it got so bad that it rubbed my butt like raw. And I was bleeding. I was literally bleeding. And then like every like shit that I took afterwards for like 2 weeks hurt. And I was like, there's no way I'm ever doing that ever again, unless like some, you know, sick individual with a lot of money was like, here's $1,000. And I'd be like, all right, fine.
I can actually imagine. Did they taste
Awful.
okay though? Did
Oh, they tasted great. Yeah, they tasted just like normal, you know, normal delicious gummy bears. But what an evil entity those are. They are just something else.
So I've got obviously a big part of the channel when it's on like the titles and stuff was vomit alert. So
Yeah.
we'll kind of go to the change of YouTube and that kind of the channel direction. So when was it kind of when the channel was affected, you know, with the kind of new guidelines and restrictions? Because I think I can remember there was a load of channels, wasn't there, where it was happening and people were getting like the accounts suspended. So for you, when did it kind of really change?
There was like 3 stages. So the first time where I noticed a huge shift on the platform was the adpocalypse that happened like 3 years ago, like maybe 4 years ago. It was actually a while back, but that was where I think that's when PewDiePie said some racist stuff online, which I like PewDiePie, by the way. You know, people make mistakes, but you know, he said something and that got in the news, and that led to a bunch of advertisers like taking off from YouTube. And our ad revenue just died a death. So but we still kept trucking on. We were still doing okay views. Then the next shift came from when they banned vomits. And it's not, I think one of the things that has to be cleared up is they didn't change the TOS. It was always not really allowed. It was kind of they considered it a gray area. They just kind of put up with it, basically. And so we were the creator of the vomit alert in the title. What that came about because Doodles My Challenge, the other YouTube channel that we're friends with, they had a contact at YouTube because they were big enough for that. And the contact basically told them, you can do the vomiting, but make sure to label it somehow in the title so that people know before they click on it. Otherwise, you know, you're going to be like a kid could watch it or something like that. So I came up with the vomit alert thing. It worked for a while, but then about, I'd say 2 years ago, they just completely, they were done with that. If you had vomit, like if you showed physical vomit in a video, that was it. You're going to get a strike. So we avoided cancellation on that. They almost closed the channel. It got really close. We got 2 strikes, got very close. So I just went through, we eliminated that, or like we covered it up, whatever we had to do. And then the newest one, it's still going on right now, actually. It just started, I'd say about a month ago, like very fresh. They've officially said that there's no, they're just officially enforcing binge drinking. They don't want anybody who's chugging alcohol, anybody who's intoxicated. Again, these are things that were always against their TOS, but they just kind of let it go because, you know, I mean, who cares? Like if you're an adult, you should be allowed to do adult things. It's not like our videos or the other channels that do this type of thing are marked as kids. Like we're not promoting to kids. We're promoting to people like us.
Yeah.
So we almost got 2 strikes. I cleared one of them. We're sitting on one as we speak, but that's why I went through and I had to just remove anything that could be problematic on the channel because YouTube is just their goal is to become like TV. You know, they want to be like a TV friendly network, which is ironic because you could be one of the Paul brothers and show a suicide victim hanging from a tree and you'll be just fine. But if you, God forbid, you chug a beer, or like the Bell Life is another channel on here as well. I know they just got 2 strikes for chugging Smirnoff, which is hilarious because they literally have videos like chugging whiskey, like chugging like some hardcore stuff, and yet YouTube hit them with strikes for chugging Smirnoff. But it is what it is. I don't agree with YouTube on their decisions and stuff, but at the end of the day, either you do what they want because it's their platform and basically they have a monopoly on this, or they'll get rid of you. And if anybody thinks that they're above that, you know, unless your name is Logan Paul, you're not above it. They will get rid of you. They don't really care. So I've been trying to shift the focus of the channel a little bit since.
Yeah, I was about to say kind of with your channel, you do a lot of your food reviews now, don't you? So obviously you go in your car and you do your reviews. Is there any other kind of things that are you trying to work on ideas for maybe your channel going forward, for maybe new content ideas? Or are you going to kind of try and stick with kind of one thing?
Yeah, well, I want to do more travel stuff, which obviously is difficult because of COVID.
Yeah.
But like we just debuted, we reworked our monthly main show, and we're calling it the We Go main show. We just went down to San Diego, and just did a bunch of stuff. Like I had the best burger I've ever had in my entire life from a place called Hodad's. Oh my God. It was so good. I bit my lip and I was bleeding because I was eating it like such a rabid beast. But yeah, I want to travel. I mean, and you know, maybe that's not everybody's jam. And I understand. I told everybody once we shifted focus from the grosser content and the drinking content, which you'll be able to find still. It's on our Patreon account. If people want to like see that kind of content, that's really the only place that it's safe to post. But as far as the regular YouTube stuff is concerned, yeah, travel stuff. I've taken a lot of inspiration from our friends Doodor's My Challenge. They did the same thing. They shifted focus to traveling, as well as Adam the Woo, which is like probably, I would argue, the best daily vlogger on the platform. He's incredible, awesome guy too. So it's difficult though, like trying to figure out what you want to do and finding that sweet spot and finding out like what you're good at. That and live streaming. Like I was live streaming on Twitch quite a bit until they gave us the ban hammer. And so now I've been doing it on YouTube. So I've been telling everybody we're in a rebuild phase for sure, because well, like almost, I'd say like 95% of our audience was like, all right, we don't get the drinking games or the vomits, like peace out. We'll see you later. But thankfully, we do have enough of a base that financially it's been fine. Like enough people are sticking around to donate and support, and they want to see this kind of stuff.
Yeah, amazing. And I was just going to ask there about your live streaming. So kind of, is that something that you've always wanted to do from a channel aspect? Because you do interact, when I've been in them, you do interact with kind of obviously the chat and stuff. And is that something that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I never planned to do it. I love it though. If I could just live stream and do nothing else, I would. But obviously, I understand that people still want to see us go out and try food and do adventures and stuff. I love it. I think live streaming is one. I just will admit, anybody who says otherwise is lying to you. But it's easier. It's way easier than producing a video. I mean, it's night and day. You just turn on a webcam, you know, start playing a video game and play. It's the interaction part that some people are bad at, which I understand. I've seen live streamers that are just awful at it. Like, you just talk, just keep talking. That's it. You know, as long as you're saying something, somebody's going to speak back and then you can interact with them. But yeah, it's definitely what I love to do the most out of everything.
Great. And kind of what if someone wanted to go and watch one of your live streams, what kind of games do you play? Or kind of, I know you do obviously WWE, which I watch. Is there anything else that you stream for the audience?
Yeah, the WWE is what I'm known for best. That's we call it WWE 2K simulated matches. WWE 2K20 is like one of the most broken messes I've ever played in my entire life. So what I do is I just let the AI fight it out, and you know, sometimes they'll teleport across the ring, sometimes their arm will break behind them and they're still doing moves somehow. I don't know, but it's what I'm known for that. But I also the game we're playing right now that's just the most relaxing game of all time is Valheim. Valheim is so much fun with friends. Like, I don't know if I would enjoy it by myself, but being a Viking, you know, it's kind of like Rust meets Minecraft a little bit, but without because the part of Rust that I hate the most is the griefing. Like when you log in and people are just there to give you a hard time. And Minecraft is just obviously a little too kid focused. This is like the baby that those had. That's mine. I like that a lot. First person shooters too. Big into first person shooters. Anytime anyone comes out, like I'll play that. But it's so good.
Amazing. And do you kind of have a schedule for when you go live, or is it just kind of on the day how you feel?
Yeah, we have a schedule for both posting and live streaming. Posting is for just video reviews is Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And then live streaming is usually Tuesday through Saturday. And I usually go live between like 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Amazing. And that's great. And like you said, I do enjoy YouTube videos, but I'm really getting into watching the stream and interacting. I think if someone's never really joined a stream before, and I think you can sometimes have a bit of a weird experience, especially if you're watching a stream, you know, of like 7,000 people and you're putting something in the chat, and obviously they're not always going to get read out. But I feel like when you get on a stream with maybe someone who's got maybe 30 or 40, 50, it is really a different dynamic. So it's really been something that I've been getting into as well and watching. Yeah. So as I said before we started the podcast and stuff, I really set up this podcast to share some success stories of whether it's like yourself, YouTubers, music artists, bands, you know, or even I've had a couple of my friends on as well. And one of the main things that we go through is kind of just raising a bit of awareness, you know, for kind of mental health, because it's had a big impact in my life. It was a weird thing where kind of the just to give you a quick backstory, and people on the podcast probably already heard this like 7 or 8 times. So
I go through that all the time.
Just
I'll tell the same stories over and over again. It's become kind of cute. They think it's cute hearing me say it. So yeah, go for it.
So for the longest time, I'd been losing my hair, and I had kind of no confidence.
I'm with you.
And I'd never had the drive really, because I was always doubting myself to do something like this. And I met a YouTuber. He's called Harry, and he does videos because he's called Bald Cafe on YouTube. And basically, he just has people on the channel, and they just share their story about the hair loss, and they shave it off at the end of the video, and they come back onto the Zoom after, and they kind of talk about the relief. So I just set this up because there were so many different stories that people had that they really didn't know how to express, and different like versions. So in my instance, I could be stood on a beach and there's 100 people, and I'm one worrying about my hair, and the 99 of the people might have other worries. So you say, you never know. And sometimes because you're so focused on yourself and your worries, that other people have them from different kind of dimensions and stuff. So I kind of set this up, and even just as a platform for people kind of messaging, it's been great, you know. And it's really, I like to think of it as kind of an escape. You can just pop it on for 45 minutes, and it's just something to take your mind off it, especially when like in England, there's no nightclubs or pubs open, you know. People are stuck listening to me on a Saturday night. So it's one of those things where they're going to kind of enjoy that. So I'm wondering, just from an aspect of a guest, has there been kind of any situations, you don't have to go into detail of it, but where you might have struggled with mental health in your own life, and kind of how you dealt with that?
Oh, just like if you do what I do, meaning YouTube or Twitch or whatever, anything where you're in public and you don't have some sense of doubt or anxiety, then you're like a psychopath, in my opinion. Like the people who come off as super confident, usually when I meet them, like when you kind of break them down and have a one-on-one conversation with them, they tend to just, you can tell that they're putting up kind of a face, you know, like a front. And I do it too. I'm a little more open about my, you know, because I suffer from anxiety and stuff as well. I'm more open about it, but I have friends that you would never tell by watching their content that they have, you know, either some sort of depression or anxiety or something. But generally speaking, most people that get into entertainment, I've found that they're definitely suffering from some sort of issue. I wanted to talk about the baldness thing. That definitely bothered me for a long time. It was like a couple of years where it was clear that the battle was over, and I was just too like in doubt to do anything about it. But then one day I just said, fuck it. Like I got my thing, I shaved my head, and it's so much easier. I don't mind it at all anymore. Now if I could have hair, sure, I guarantee I would, but because, you know, the battle is done.
Yeah.
I don't know. I much prefer life as is right now.
It is. And especially with hair loss, it's amazing. Once you do it, it's like, oh, is that it? Like all these worries I'd had of, you know, going outside and it's windy and not having a cap on, and now we can go in the shower, get out, dry yourself, and we're ready to go. Whereas before, for me, I'd be worrying if my hair was slightly out of place, you know, and it was shown if on a camera photo or anything like that. And it's amazing because I always thought if I shave, like for me, I'm 22, so I always thought if I was shaving my head, I'd be like, oh, I'm not like everyone else. I'm going to look different if I go out. But like, once you do it, you're like, oh, well, it brings out you as a person more because you're happier. I'd prefer to have no hair and be happy than have hair and be miserable, you know? So it's a big thing. And especially with this, like this time last year, there's no way I would have the confidence to speak to people who I'd probably never, who I'd like me and you, we spoke on message, but like not face to face, you know, and even posting something on YouTube where anyone can see that there's no way. So with kind of battles and stuff, I'm wondering, just for anyone who was suffering or maybe having a struggle, what kind of advice would you give them just from a point of view of yourself?
Disconnection is really important. Like disconnecting from if you're having a hard time doing this, like I'm bad at taking this advice too, because I definitely need to sometimes. But trying to please everybody is not going to please anybody. One example, I kind of want to go back to the whole, like you said a point that I thought was cool. It was how, well, you know, you're worrying about how everybody's thinking about you, but when you go outside, everybody's worrying about themselves too. Like we're all there. Everybody does that. I took my first trip to Hawaii a while back. And because I'm not in great shape. Like I've got a dad bod for sure. And like I almost never, like, unless you get me in the bedroom and you're pulling my shirt off and I'm kicking and screaming, I'm like, no, just let me do it to you with the shirt on. Like it was the first time that I ever took my shirt off at a beach. And like I was, oh my God, I was so much anxiety. But my girlfriend at the time was, you know, she was encouraging me to just go for it. And then the moment I did, I looked around and everybody was fat. And I went, oh yeah, nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. So, you know, like sometimes you just have to get out of your comfort zone. I think that that's important too. Get out of your comfort zone. And once you do, you'll realize that whatever fear you had, it's not as big of a deal.
It's not. That's actually amazing, because when I did the video with Harry, I'd said that when I was on holiday, there was no way I'd ever take my shirt off at the beach.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that so many people probably have that same anxiety on the same beach as you, but because it's you thinking it's going to be the end of the world when, well, if someone walks past you and they look at you, you don't know them, you're never going to see them again. And it's, if they want to clearly, I've learned over the years that if someone wants to kind of judge you based off an appearance, they're not worth your time, really. Spend your time with people.
Like what made me really comfortable was because I'm kind of still in the like, oh, this is weird. And I looked by and these like 4 like just huge Samoan guys, like huge, like some in Hawaii, they've got their tattoos, just big dudes, and they're just walking by owning it. They could care less. And that's when I saw that I was like, okay, nobody gives a shit. Everybody's just here to have a good time. So it definitely helped. Thank you, 4 giant Samoan men that walked by me in Hawaii.
And like you say, it's a repetitive cycle of the more you do it, the more you're going to become comfortable. But it's like anything, you just got to take that first leap. It's not going to be easy. You've built up all this anxiety in your head anyway, so it's not going to be take your shirt off and think you're Dwayne the Rock Johnson, are you? You're going to still feel like yourself. But the more you do it, the more you feel comfortable with yourself. And like you say, I'm the same as you. Like I've not got abs or anything, you know. Like when I go on holiday with my friends, you'll know all these people who are like they've got their 8 packs and their arms are massive, and you're there, you know, me with me no hair and everything. So you just gotta embrace who you are, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be anyone else when you wake up. You're always going to be yourself.
And you know that like those people that have the 6-pack and the abs, like they're walking around going like, oh my God, they're noticing something about me. Like we're human beings, man. We're built to be kind of like self-doubting and whatnot. So even the most beautiful person on that beach is probably like, oh my God, if they see my hair, it's just not quite right today. Everybody's always worrying about their own stuff.
And I was thinking about, obviously, the best thing I did really was talk about it. And I know it's kind of like, if someone's got a bit of anxiety, it's quite, you know, they'll think it's very generic if you just say, oh, speak to someone about it. But it does realistically, the more you do it, it gives you a different output and a different look on things. So if I say told my mom, then that's a different opinion or a different kind of just outlook on the situation that can kind of help the situation. So I'm wondering, is there anyone you particularly speak to, whether it's like friends, parents, siblings, you know, for advice if you're ever struggling with anything?
Oh yeah, of course. Parents, I have a really close relationship with my mom and dad. You know, Chris from the channel, I talk to him because we're really close. My friend Tom, who I do the live streaming with, he's Old Man Tom on the show. But like, I have a lot of people. I think that's really important. Having a group of people that you can go to if you have any issue of any kind. Like as long as if you have a friend where you can tell them the worst possible news and they're there to try and comfort you and, you know, still tell you, you know, what's up, not sugarcoat it. I prefer when they don't. My mom and dad are the worst with that. That's why I go to them last, but they sugarcoat everything. But like, I'll go to Old Man Tom or I'll go to Chris because they'll tell me exactly what I need to hear. They don't tell me, you know, what they don't sugarcoat it all is the best way I can say it. But yeah, have a support group. If you do suffer from anxiety and depression, like try your best to have other people you can reach out to for sure. It does help.
Yeah, amazing. And it's great. Thanks for obviously speaking about things like that, because it just gives another aspect of kind of someone who maybe if you watched a video for 5 minutes, they'd never really know kind of some maybe worries that they have. So moving on from that, we've got wrestling. So wrestling's obviously a big part of both our lives. And I'm wondering, growing up, what kind of wrestlers really, because I think we might be different times of when we started watching maybe. So what was the kind of the wrestlers growing up that you really like loved and really got you attracted to wrestling?
Well, I grew up being taught that wrestling was stupid, and it kind of is, though, to be fair, But I like, my mom and dad thought it was the most ridiculous thing. They still do. Obviously, they're nice about it now because they know I like it. But I was just taught that it was that fake crap that nobody respects or whatever. And then when I got into middle school, that's when the Attitude Era kicked in. And every single person was into it. And it was one of those things where it's like, either you're going to start watching it and either like pretending to like it, or everybody's going to shit on you for not watching. So I started watching, and at first I just did it to fit in. The very first show I saw, I was hooked like that. It was the Raw before Survivor Series, where they did the Deadly Games tournament, which is where The Rock turned heel, joined the corporation. Mankind was supposed to be Vince McMahon's, his guy, but it was a swerve, and it was The Rock. I saw the show before that, and I was like, I loved it. I was just like, wow, this is awesome. And so naturally, because the first two guys I saw were The Rock and Mankind, those were my boys when I first started. But I've been, watching ever since. I love guys like Daniel Bryan. Like, unironically, I'm just wearing a shirt. I just have a bunch of them. Daniel Bryan's one of my guys. But there's so many great athletes. Like, a lot of people don't realize it. I think I have a little bit more respect for it because of the fact that I've done it to a degree, not as much as them, but like, I've been in a ring, I've taken bumps and things like that. It is one of the most difficult physical things you could possibly do. But I've been watching it for years and years. I kind of fell off of WWE a little bit. I still do the reactions to the pay-per-views on the YouTube channel, but AEW's like currently my jam. AEW is fantastic. Like, it feels like a company that like gives a crap, which is nice. But yeah, I've been watching forever. I was curious though, like what was your like entry point?
So mine would have been, so I'm trying to think, I was quite young. I think mine would have been maybe, I'm trying to think, probably about 2003, 2004, something like that. So my guys were The Rock was slightly leaving to do more movies, but then it was kind of like Triple H, Shawn Michaels. They had the DX going, and then obviously a bit later on they did the reunion. But I'm trying to think, my guys were Batista. I loved SmackDown. If it was, SmackDown versus Raw, I was always SmackDown because I loved Batista. I loved Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, all these.
Yeah,
that was my jam, was that. And obviously I've always loved Edge. Edge is just amazing. So kind of,
it's been wild to see him back, by the way. He is better than ever. I've seen some people saying that, like, oh well, he's not as good as he was. What are you talking about? His like, obviously he got better at acting because his promos are just they're incredible. I would put them up against some of the best promos I've ever heard. And his in-ring work, he's so good. Yes. Everybody's going like, oh well, they're just pushing another part-timer. I'm like, there's a big difference between a Goldberg match and an Edge match. Excuse you.
I was going to say that with Edge, I think people forget what he was before he had to retire. Because when you look back, he was really, really out of shape for what he is now. He's ripped now for someone who's 10 years older, basically. And I just think, like, these were probably the people who moaned when he had to retire. And if he did a spear on SummerSlam, we didn't see him for 3 years. But like, he's been back a year nearly anyway, and he had an injury, but he's been back. So I have no problem pushing Edge. And
it's amazing.
I think what I was going to say, what's your kind of opinion on the product now? Because for me, I'm only watching it. I have all the channels, but I'm only watching the highlights on YouTube. Yeah. I don't think I could sit through the whole show. I wonder what your thoughts are at the moment.
The problem is Vince McMahon. I mean, that's just all it comes down to. He clearly is out of touch. I mean, he's always had a semblance of being out of touch for a while now, but it was like, the occasional decision. Like, putting a mole on some chick's cheek, or giving like Natalia a fart gimmick, or something that just was stupid. Like, nobody wants that. But whatever. I would say that you would give him his little weird pet project, but everything else, for the most part, was working. The problem isn't the talent. Like, WWE has arguably the most talented roster on the planet right now. Like, they are stacked, but their creative is just, it's awful. I've been watching for, since 1999. I think I am a fair person to critique the fact that Vince McMahon is out of his mind, and he has no idea. And I mean, like, well, how old is he? 76 or something?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, it's not an ageism problem. He is just completely out of touch for what people like. And the reason why I think Edge is doing so well is I think Edge has a lot of say in what he's doing, because he's obviously, when he came back, it just seems like he's in control.
Yeah.
But like, any time that you get Vince in control of the product, it's just so mind-bogglingly. Like, they will start something and you go, okay, let's see where this goes. And then next week, they just completely forgot about it. Like, they just won't mention it anymore. Or they'll push somebody who you think, like, here's a good example. Now, he's not the best wrestler in the world, but I enjoyed his work. Elias. I really liked Elias when they were pushing him as a good guy, because he was getting these monster reactions. Like, people, they were giving him, love and support. And then just out of nowhere, one week, they're like, nah, he's a bad guy again. And they just killed everything about him again. And it's like, the problem with WWE is you can't get invested in anything anymore, because in one week, it just completely changes, which is why I like AEW more, because AEW, like, look at the Kenny Omega storyline they're doing right now. They were waiting to do this for months to give him the belt and make him a bad guy. And my prediction is, I think Adam Page is going to be the guy to take the belt off of Kenny Omega, but like later, because they never quite finished that feud that they were having. They kind of had a mini blow off, but then now they're building up Page again. And eventually, I think Adam Page is going to be the guy to face Omega at the next big show, and he'll take the belt off of him. I love how they book ahead of time. This is what WWE used to do back in like the 90s. They would plan things out months in advance and be like, like, I remember when SummerSlam would roll around, they would kind of hint as to what the WrestleMania main event would be, and they would wait all those months to give it to you. Now look at the WrestleMania they're putting on this year. What the hell are they doing? Like, it's like 3 weeks before, and they're like, I guess we'll do Lashley, give him the title, and then I guess Drew. I don't know what's happening. I feel like Vince has an attention problem when it comes to his own product, whereas AEW they're hungry. They're rabid. They want to make a good product, and Vince is just, he's more interested in being complacent and just being happy himself, which, hey, it's his company, he can do what he wants. But oh my god, WWE is a chore to get through sometimes, whereas AEW is always a pleasure, even if that exploding ring thing was laughable at best.
I was about to say, like, I'd always had, even when there was the rough patches, there was always someone who in WWE who I'd always be still hooked to watch. So when we had like the start of the 2010s, they'd have like, well, I always loved CM Punk. So, you had CM Punk, and then obviously Daniel Bryan, where he had the underdog and the WrestleMania moment.
Oh, that's one of my favorite periods. Like,
it is.
I loved it. And to a good point too, that, they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to do that. They did not want him in that spot. And the fans overwhelmingly pulled Vince dragging and screaming to it. But
yeah, because that was the Batista won the Rumble, wasn't it? And everyone was booing him, and people were booing Rey Mysterio, and people were saying, how is Rey Mysterio getting booed? So you've got. So you had.
I get angry. I get angry whenever I think. At least it worked out well. At least we had our moment where he won and everything. But
amazing. That was amazing. But that was, like you say, the fans driving it, and not that. And then even when they did the first brand split, and you had SmackDown Raw, and SmackDown had like AJ Styles, and it was the Great Show, and Dean Ambrose and Sami Zayn was doing well, and Kevin Owens. I just think, like, now I've got no one to really. I like Drew McIntyre, obviously, because he's from the UK, so Drew McIntyre. But then I feel like his title run went from like he's doing good in the PC and he's pushing it to then drop the belt to Orton, suddenly win it back again, and then this reign was just like, well, it's not as good now because he's already lost it once. I just
that's
think
Vince's ADD though. That is I'm with you though. There was no reason for him to lose to Randy Orton and then just to beat him back. There was absolutely no reason to do that. And poor Drew, I feel for him a little bit because obviously he had to carry the belt during the COVID era. There's not a lot he could do for that. But I love him. I equate him to being like Kevin Nash, but with talent. Like he's good. Nash is a good entertainer, but he's not a good wrestler. Yeah. Whereas like Drew is really good in the ring, and I never pictured him being the guy until they gave him the belt. And I was like, wow, he actually has the look. He's great in the ring. He's a decent promo, not a great one, but a decent promo. And I'm sad that this convolute, if they really wanted to give the belt to Lashley, just have Lashley beat Drew at WrestleMania. Why did they do this convoluted crap where they like gave the belt to Miz and then gave it to Lashley? And now it's like, it feels like every day Vince wakes up and he's like, never mind, I want to do this now. And it's like, all they had to do was have Lashley beat Drew at WrestleMania. It would have been fine. I would have been completely okay with that.
I know. And I think what also took a hit is I feel like I always was a tag team fan. So I always loved like a tag team. And one of my favorite moments still pretty much ever is because he's English. Then during the Nexus debuted, the Nexus was this like this thing where you'd never seen it before, because NXT then was obviously pretty much a reality show. It wasn't great. But like that was like something where you think for a talented person like Wade Barrett, again, that was 10 years ago, and that was pretty out of touch then, because obviously Cena went over. I feel like ever since then, it's just been there's not a constant amazing kind of year to 2 years to 3 years. It's a year where I'm interested. Come 2019, they've changed the Raw theme again for the 400th time. Yeah. And there's I don't know. I feel like I if I was to pick now, I'd watch NXT over any of them too. I do like AEW, and I'm Impact. I've gone off now, but I used to like TNA when it was TNA, when they had like the Kurt Angle where he was winning all the belts, and AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. But the wrestling point of view, I don't know. But anyway, positive note, we'll talk about video games. So I'm wondering what's your favorite wrestling game? Because I've got a few, but I'm wondering what your favorite wrestling games are.
Well, I don't really even play anymore. I know that amazes people. I have never actually played a single game in WWE 2K, any of them. I literally just simulate the matches now. I just don't even have the desire to play. But back in the day, my favorites were WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy for the N64. I played a lot of the like the SmackDown games as well. A couple of the Raw and Raw 2 for Xbox. So I played quite a bit of them until I fell off on them. But I would say No Mercy is the one I put the most time and effort into, which is why the AEW game sounds exciting. Because apparently that's what they're modeling it after. Is it's going to be this like the same aesthetic and controls as the No Mercy game, because obviously Cody and all of them are all fans of that era because they're about our age, which always blows my mind that they're as much, or at least my age. So it's crazy to know that they're such big fans that they're going to bring that back. So that's exciting. What about you?
I've got SmackDown versus Raw 2007 is one of my favorites, because they had the GM mode, which blows my mind that they haven't brought that concept back, because it was so ahead of its time. And then you take something away, which could be 10 times better now the more you develop it. But
they all do that too, though. They all do that. All the W2K games, they take stuff out. Yeah. They keep charging you $60, but they keep taking things out. I don't understand how that's possible.
I know. You had like I'm trying to think. I got them all. I've got them all, but 2K20, I think I lasted about a week on it, and that's really short. Normally, I last about a month of playing Universe, maybe a showcase, but that I don't know. I just felt like it took away most of the video game aspect, because they're trying to make it too real. I think everything's it's slow pace. There's, like you said, the glitches. You run towards someone and he goes flying through the ropes and he's stuck on the rope with his hand hanging out. And it was one of those things I was like, oh, I'm not really like fussed about them anymore, really. But it was funny because at the start of this discussion, my last question on it is, how do you react when someone says to you that wrestling's fake? So obviously it was different when you first listened to it, started watching it, because it was kind of the trendy thing, like you said, back in the day when you really got into it. But what is it now? Like if someone said, oh, you still watch wrestling, what would you say to that, and what's your opinion?
It doesn't bug me. It never really bugged me that
Yeah.
much. But I have the same response every time. I go, yeah, so is Mission Impossible, but you still like that. So I mean, what do you, like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. And like whenever they go like, oh, well, UFC's not fake, and I go like, yeah, it is. Like the actual match that they have, like the fight is not, sure. But the
Yeah.
build up, it always annoys me when you see these guys face to face, and it's not every case, but a good majority of them, they're like, I'm gonna make his wife a widow, and I'm gonna bash his kids' faces, and then like after the fight they shake hands and go, man, I've always respected you. It was a pleasure to get into the octagon with you, and you're just like, come on, like, shut up.
I'm the same. It doesn't bother me. It's like one of those things where you've heard it for so long, you're like, oh well. So you don't watch TV, which is all scripted before they record the scenes. So to me, like it's great. And so to end every podcast, I have a thing. It's called If You Had to Choose Three. Okay. So what it is we'll go through a couple of items, and if you can choose three your favorite things from that category. So if I was to say, so if you had to pick now three your favorite food items, like fast food, so if you were going somewhere in a car and you had 3 stops, where do you think you'd go to for your 3 different meals?
Taco Bell for sure, because Taco Bell, they took away the potatoes off the menu, which was a huge travesty. I mean, like everybody was pissed. But thankfully they've corrected that and they've put the potatoes back on the menu. But Taco Bell's my number one if you're talking about like chains that everybody would know. My other place to go to, it's called Brothers Burgers. It's actually just out here. It's one location. It's a little mom and pop owned place. It's delicious. And I guess if I had to do one more, I used to say Carl's Jr., but Carl's Jr. has fallen off a bit. I would say every once in a while, if I want to just sit in bed while I'm crying and getting fatter, I will get a Jack in the Box ultimate bacon cheeseburger with sourdough bread and dip it in their ranch with a side of like curly fries. I only do that every once in a blue moon, but those would be my 3.
Amazing. So what would you go for then? They don't have to be linked to the restaurants, but if you had to choose 3 drinks, whether it's alcoholic or not, what do you think you'd go for your 3 drinks?
I never get drinks from fast food places. Like I will just go and get an energy drink. I'm an energy drink fiend. So especially the Reign energy drink flavors, though, like I love that brand. So I'll always skip the fast food stuff and I go straight to the liquor store or 7-Eleven or whatever out here. And I'll just grab a Reign energy drink there. Best flavor is the lychee flavor. It is so good. It is amazing.
And do you have any preference for if you were doing, like, obviously your challenges, you've had all the alcohol, but is there anything that if you were going to, like you said, the liquor store, what would you get if you went straight in? What kind of alcohols you fancy?
Oh, I mean, I love Four Loko. I'm one of the only people on the planet that like genuinely likes that. Like most people just unironically enjoy it. I love this stuff. Like not only do I owe a lot of my success to that because of our Four Loko Pong video, that was like our first big get. But I love it. It's so good. The peach Four Loko is just delicious. They came out with one that I'm not seeing it as much anymore, which I think they discontinued it, but maybe not. They came out with a Four Loko Red, and it tastes like Swedish fish, the candy.
Yeah.
You ever had that before? Oh man, yeah. I'm definitely gonna grab a Four Loko. That or Buzz Balls are also delicious. Another thing that like led to a little bit of our success. They look like little Christmas ornaments for anybody that's seen them, but they're filled with like mixed drinks and stuff. They're delicious. They're very good.
Amazing. And if you had to choose 3 movies, so if you sat on the sofa, 3 movies that you could put on kind of on repeat, what would you go for?
I would do The Matrix because I love the original Matrix movie. I would do probably Endgame for Marvel because I can still watch that over and over again. Although the more I'm watching it, the more I'm picking apart little things. Like I'm going to ruin this for everybody that watches, but like when Robert Downey Jr. at the end, when he does the snap on Thanos, they reshot it. So like the zoom in of him with the gems coming up on his thing is fine. That's the original shot. Yeah. But then it like cuts to Thanos reacting and it cuts back to him. And it's clearly a different day, Robert Downey Jr. And it annoys the shit out of me to know. Sometimes I'll just fast forward through that so I don't get upset. And one other one, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, the original one. I love that movie. I'll go back and watch that a million times.
I'm going to have to fast forward tonight, the end game, to have a look at that when...
It's once because like the Russo brothers that directed it, they got asked about it because they had to bring him back in because the original ending was he just did the snap. He didn't say anything. Yeah. And so that was all filmed and done. Well, it was missing that something, right? And that's why they were like, instead of I am inevitable and nothing, he goes, I am inevitable. And then they're like, oh, let's have him say, I am Iron Man, which is how he finished the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
Brilliant. But all they had to do was refilm him having the gems come up onto his hand too, because his hair shifts dramatically. It's like even grayer and it's like off to the side. Like you'll watch it after this and I guarantee you'll go, damn it, Matt just ruined that scene for me forever.
And the last one I've got is, it's a destination one. So 3 destinations that you want to visit or you have visited and you'd want to go again.
One that I haven't visited that I'd like to go to is Japan, which I'm hoping to go in the next couple of years. I'm going to make that happen. That flight is brutal though. It's like 16 hours or 14 hours or something. And I hate flying, but Japan is the one I haven't been to. I would love to go back to Chicago. Chicago is awesome. It's such a fun city. But the one I want to go back to the most is Hawaii. I loved Hawaii. Hawaii is just the most relaxing place. It's just an island where everybody's just high as shit and everybody's just having fun. So I would love to go see more islands on Hawaii.
Amazing. So that's covered to the end of the podcast. So like I said, thank you again for coming on, Matt. Again, I always end it off with, is there anything that you want to maybe say to the listeners, whether it's motivational or about your channel, anything that you want to leave your note on the podcast, or what would you want to say?
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for having me. It was fun. I enjoyed interacting with you. We'll have to do this again sometime. As far as like, I was just telling everybody, man, like, be happy. Do what makes you happy. You know, even sometimes it might not lead to the success that you're looking for. I know a lot of people today put too much emphasis on success. Like my story in general, like right now, you know, some people would look at what's going on with our channel and say like, oh, well, these guys are just failed or whatever. I can assure you I'm making a decent living. I'm doing what I like doing. And even though I'm not a millionaire, I'm not super famous, which I never wanted to begin with anyway. I've never desired to be famous. I've seen what happens to people when they become famous. Just, you know, do what makes you happy. Life's too short. Like I'm already 36 years old and it feels like life has just gone by in a flash. You know, enjoy what you have while you have it, because there's so many people out there that don't go for it and don't go for what makes them happy. And they're holding themselves back, like we talked about with anxiety or depression or any of those things. Sometimes you just have to try to conquer through it, push through it, and just do what makes you happy. Because at the end of the day, that's what's important. You know, not making everybody else happy, making yourself happy should come first, and then focus on making other people happy too.
Amazing. Thank you, Matt. So thank you everyone for listening. And this, like I say, this will be up as a regular time on Monday. So thanks everyone for listening.